a kind of strange analysis of World War Z. Did you see that movie?
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with it? Like you could talk about it or no?
Oh, I've seen the movie several times. I've read the book. I've read all the Max Brooks books.
So I haven't read the book, but I'm strictly about the movie. I watched it the other night and I had some comments, some thoughts.
No one's read the book. It's fascinating, but yeah.
Danny's read the book. I want to read the book.
It's pretty good. I have it. Yeah, it's right there.
I've heard that the movie's not really about the book, though.
We can get into it if you want to.
Sure.
I don't have a notepad. Hang on, pause it. I mean, you don't have to pause the recording. I'm just going to run away real quick.
So you're good.
Welcome to another episode of The Fake Philosophers. I don't know what episode number this is. Mike, what do you think? What number? If you had to guess. Without looking. If you had to guess.
Without looking. High 70s or low 80s?
Oh, okay. I was going to guess over 100, but okay.
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Well, should we do something special for our 100th?
We should. We probably won't. We'll probably forget, but we should.
I just fucking hit the lever on my seat and dropped. Ow. Okay. No, I'm good. All right. Did we do something special for the 69th episode?
We should have. We did not. I was searching for us on YouTube and I accidentally typed in the Cake Philosophers.
The Cake Philosophers. That's our sister spinoff. My wife, who's a very accomplished baker, hosts the Cake Philosophers. It's pretty good.
My wife also likes to bake. We should actually make that happen.
We should make them bake for us.
The Cake Philosophers, the women's show. The women's take.
Oh man. Oh,
she might be down. She might be down too. Mine might be.
The women's take philosophers.
83 is so this would be 84.
This is 84. Welcome to the 84th episode.
Yep.
Of the Fake Philosophers. My name is Mitch.
Introduce the soon-to-be spin-off, the Cake Philosophers.
Right. Yeah. You heard it here. You heard it here first.
Sorry, Fake philosophy and baking for women.
Should have done my diction warm-ups before we started, but oh well.
No.
I was
going in raw.
Downstairs rewatching YouTube videos of The Lonely Island and SNL and all that.
That's why you're right.
I'm proud of Andy Samberg, you know?
I either really like Andy Samberg or I really hate him. There's literally no in between. Like there's
do you like Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Okay, so I'm one of those people, and there's a joke about Brooklyn Nine-Nine specifically, that there's two fan types. There's the people who actually watch the show, and then people who just watch clips on YouTube.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I am part of the people that watch just the clips on YouTube with the funny scenes.
Okay, yeah. No, I've seen clips. I've tried watching it. My wife really likes it. I've tried watching it. It's okay. You know, it's just I think there are funnier things.
I feel like if I watch it, it'll ruin the love I have for the clips I've watched.
Okay, yeah. I feel like it's a show that could have been hilarious because they had like a good take on like, hey, let's do a cop comedy. And the main guy is just a guy who, how does he get away with all the crazy antics he does? But because it was like sold to be on television, I don't even know if it was regular network or primetime, if it was cable. I don't know what the original network
I think it was on network, I think.
So they had to Jimmy Fallon it down and be kind of like, you know, cookie cutter and formulaic and kind of, it was just another sitcom. And I'm just surprised it didn't have a laugh track in it.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like when I watch the clips of the show, it's always like the really funny moments. So I'm like, this is really good. But I have a feeling if I watched episode by episode, I would get really like, ugh. Because like I said, Andy Samberg, for me, I either really, really like him or I find him completely intolerable.
You know what's funny is that there are shows that are the opposite for me, that if you watched clips of it, you wouldn't think it's that funny. Shows like the Always Sunny in Philadelphia or Archer or, you know, shows like that if you show people just clips of Always Sunny, it's like, okay, you know, okay. But if you watch the whole episode, you have context and it's actually pretty funny. So,
because it kind of, everything kind of connects in that show.
Yeah, I like a little effort in my comedy. I don't like bits. I don't like one-offs, you know?
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah.
Fucking Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
There's a joke about that show too where I'm sure you've seen like the scene where he makes the lineup sing the Backstreet Boys.
Oh yeah, classic.
And there's a joke where it's like that scene, that clip alone has its own fan base.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, with people who've never seen the show like me, but they watch that clip and they're like, "That's awesome."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm sure it was just like it was probably a team. I have no idea. I'm just guessing. It was probably a team of writers that were like good, like individually, but never really collabed, never really worked together to create funny situations. They all just kind of come in with funny little bits and they throw it together and call it a show.
Well, it's kind of like how I look at Step Brothers. If you really look at Step Brothers, that movie, and I like Step Brothers. Before I say anything,
no, but
I like it. But the movie is really fucking retarded. Like it's really stupid. But I feel really like
there's
the writers, Will Smith, what's his name?
You said Will Smith.
Will Smith, Jesus. Will Smith, the spinoff, him and Martin Lawrence.
Step Brothers.
Step Bad Boys.
Oh man. No,
Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Sorry,
Riley. Yeah,
I think they had a bunch of them just had a lot of jokes, and they're like, "How can we just make a movie with these jokes?" And they made Step Brothers, which
it's the
was
same
fine.
with Talladega Nights, and and I'm sorry, but Anchorman to some degree as well. Like Anchorman had a little bit more structure to it. One of the Lost movies that Will Ferrell did, I think, was Semi-Pro, where he's the basketball player.
I like that one. Yeah,
that one's actually one of my favorite movies, and as a whole, I think it's pretty good. It's got structure and all that, but it's also full of really funny bits. So,
and I remember I had a professor who was like a stickler of like comedy and movies and stuff, and even he said like Pineapple Express. Yeah, he enjoyed it, and he was like, "If I feel like this was like a sketch comedy team who had a lot of jokes, just like stoner jokes buried, and they're like, let's make a movie of all these stoner jokes."
Guys who grew up watching Cheech and Chong, and were just like, we need like a modern Cheech and Chong. Here's Pineapple Express.
Yeah.
Anyway, how we get started on that? Oh yeah, SNL. So I was watching SNL. It was funny, and I was. My wife was like, I got to go up and I got to get started. I just got the Zoom invite, and she's like, yeah, but you haven't seen this one. I was like, it's true. And then halfway through it, I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen it. It was the one. I have a feeling today's going to be a great day. It's a guy with like the white powder all over his face, and he's singing and dancing through the streets. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, all right. Cool.
Update on my cats. They're pretty friendly. They're knocking on the door. They're trying to get in.
The people were asking about your cats. Yeah.
They cannot stand to not be allowed in a room. It's pretty crazy.
That's kind of like the dog. My sister has a dog right now that's guilty of this. To where like if the door is shut, he wants to go outside, but as soon as you open the door, he has no interest.
Mm-hmm.
Common tale.
I'm sure I'm the first one to ever point out the wild behavior of cats.
I don't think the internet's ever talked about cats.
So before we started today, Mike was kind of going through topics of, lost topics and current topics, discussions, whatever. And there was one that in the lost, like we said in a previous episode, we'll talk about that. We has a whole other episode, kind of talk about that. But we'll get to that in a minute. But he mentioned something offhandedly about the movie World War Z. And he said he has an interesting take on it. And I'm kind of curious to hear it.
Well, it's nothing crazy like to change it, but
fuck it, never mind then. Fuck it.
Well, no, like I was watching it the other day because it's one of those movies. So you've been to my house. We do have. We were fortunate when we bought it. This woman already put the system in place where there's like a TV outside, a TV like there's like 3 or 4 different TVs areas. They're all hooked to one box, so we can put on a movie throughout the house. Anyway, so when I go out, we have a TV in the kitchen, and when I go out to grill outside, I'll usually put a movie on. So when I go into the kitchen, the movie's playing. I go outside to the grill, the movie's playing. So I have like 20 different movies that I've recycled that I just watch while I'm grilling.
Nice.
World War Z is one of them. And I was watching it the other day. And if you recall the scene where, and I should come up with a phrase or something to title this, like this concept, that something happens and then they never talk about it again. So in this movie, and I'll come up with some clever thing. Like we talked about the shit in the salad.
Yeah,
I'll come up with some clever thing because this doesn't ruin the movie. It's just something like they're really just gonna let that go.
Yeah, okay.
If you remember, there's a scene where he goes with the doctor, or whatever he is, and this team of SEALs, and they fly to South Korea. And so upon landing, shit goes south. The doctor accidentally shoots himself because he falls over. and they all
It's
go
amazing.
and hide.
It's amazing.
Yeah. I remember when I watched it again, I was like, oh shit, well that went south fast.
Yeah, it was one of the. I remember because I saw it in the theater, and I remember when that happened, and everyone's like, "What the fuck?" And I was like cheering, not because I loved the character and everything, but I loved the realism of that moment. It's that thing of like, if I'm in the because everyone likes to be like, yeah, if zombies happen, man, I'm getting my M4 or my M16 and my Beretta, and I'm gonna fucking own it. And more than likely, you're gonna hurt yourself because you don't know how to handle this shit. And it's like, he's a doctor, he doesn't know what he's doing, and he runs, trips, and falls. Yeah, and he shoots himself. It's hilarious.
It is a side topic because it was really funny. No, you're absolutely right. Because as civilians, like we might have basic gun training, but when it comes to a stressful situation, you're not going to know what the fuck to do.
No
and I
way.
remember, Sam Ridley, he's on Illegal Opinions podcast. Me and him were chatting. This was a couple months ago about Oculus games and like Oculus shooters.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's telling me about one. I was telling him about one called, I forgot the name of it. But so I recorded with my Oculus me like just showing him the mechanics of the game. And granted, it's not real guns, but for the life of me, I couldn't fucking reload my assault rifle. And so I'm recording it, and I'm like fucking trying to do it. And I still sent him the video because I was just showing him the mechanics. And his first response was like, "You're a fucking civilian, yep. Like, you can't even load the fucking rifle in a game." And I was like, fuck you, you're right, but fuck you.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to World War Z. So
we'll circle back to zombie survival because that was a topic I was passionate about.
Should I put that in my lost topics or just talk about this today and ditch the other one?
We'll see.
We'll see.
World War Z.
So that scene was coming along. So he goes in the base. They talk. They discuss about how the one guy was infected in their little prison and everything went to shit. So they're getting ready to leave.
Yeah.
And they're on the bikes, and this is a sound strategy, no pun intended. They're on the bikes to move quickly but quietly. And his cell phone goes off.
Yeah.
And like right now, I turn my phone to vibrate. I put on vibrate so I can at least hear it if it's ringing and it's an emergency. But I feel like I'm pretty. I'm a forgettable person, but I'm pretty conscious about. Even when I'm interviewing someone at the bar, I silence my phone.
Yeah.
If I'm talking to an important rep, I silence my phone. If I'm doing certain things, I silence my phone. I feel like if I had a cell phone on me and the number one stimulant to these creatures is sound,
yeah,
I would mute my phone. If only for that 45 seconds of getting to the plane. So it was his wife calling him.
Mm-hmm.
And to go on a slightly misogynistic tangent, you know this motherfucker's in the field. Why are you calling him? He'll call you.
So anxious. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Like, number one.
Yeah.
Like, even my lady, and it's not the same thing. When I was bartending a lot, she wouldn't call me unless it was an emergency. Because she just knows I'm working. I can't pick up the phone. This man is in the field dealing with zombies and shit.
Just because there's a challenge to that point, because you're right. If the scenario you're describing is true, you're right. But I think in this movie, he tried to call her, but she was away from the phone and it disconnected. And he was like, oh, like before they went out on the bikes, he like tried to call her.
I forgot that. Yeah.
And so she's like, shit, should I call? Should I not? So I don't think that was like one, but still though, why is his phone ringing?
Yes.
To that, I would say, have you ever gotten a new phone and known how to work it within the day? Like make sure it was on silent or whatever?
Yeah, but he is a guy who's done... Anyway. That's not even the point I was going to make.
Granted, I just got my first iPhone. I switched over to iPhone last month.
You monster.
Yeah, I know. And I am fucking lost when it comes to that. I've had it for a month, maybe 2 months now, I think, and I'm still like, how the fuck do I do this? So if you were to tell me, is your phone on silent? I'd be like, I fucking think. I don't know. I'd turn it off just to be sure, but
if you were about to go run from your house to across the street, and there's
like
fucking animals that are going to chase you down,
yeah,
you would figure that fucking shit out really quick.
I'd probably leave it in the house. Yeah.
Either way, you'd solve the problem. So that's not even what I was getting to.
Go for it.
So the scene happens. He scatters. I do love the one Navy SEAL who says over the radio, like, "Please, ladies and gentlemen, silence your phones." And
yeah,
like
that
it was kind
good. Yeah.
And so the whole scene happens. He gets on the plane. Navy SEALs die people died because of this error. I'm not even just blaming the wife. Like, I'm blaming him too. He left his phone on. They get on the plane. Plane takes off. Of course, Brad Pitt lives. And then I think he calls her back.
Uh-huh.
I forgot the conversation, but I remember it was to the effect of like, she was like, "Is everything okay?" And you see it in his eyes, like, "I can't tell this bitch."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I say that to be funny, but like, there's like this quick look in his eyes where he's like, "I can't tell her that she just fucking got these guys killed."
Can you imagine? Oh my God, yeah.
And so and granted,
it'll be one of those like ever after scenarios, like 10 years from then. When they're like happily back together and they're trying to deal with trauma or whatever, but then they have a nothing fight and they're in the kitchen. The kids are like grown up, going to their makeshift high school because the world's still all fucked up. And, they don't have any money because their corn's dead or whatever the hell they're doing in their new dystopian future. And they're bitching about something. And he's like, okay, you know what? Guess what? You remember that time you called me and you know what? You killed like 5 SEALs, babe. You. And
Good men.
Yeah. Why? Do you remember why you called? No, but they remember you calling.
Yeah. But I do remember that because now that I'm thinking about it, they do handle it because Brad Pitt's character does have a look on his face like, oh shit, like, fuck, she doesn't even know. But I do feel in the back of my head, as I continued watching the other day, I was like, they never go back to that.
Or circle back.
But like, you know what I mean? Like that's a heavy thing. That's really heavy. And I have different examples in different movies and books and stuff that this happens to where like something heavy happens and they just never address it.
I heard somewhere that the first rule in like writing classes is pay everything off. If you're gonna set something up, pay it off. Like you can't just check off. You can't just check off your gun into a corner there. You got.
Yeah. In this one, it wasn't like a huge thing, but I just remember thinking that there's certain scenes like in movies where like when I watch it 100 times, then just one time I'm like, wait a second, that was one that stuck out to me. I was like, that's kind of a big deal, because that was useless deaths. Like that didn't need to happen, but it happened. Go on, yeah.
Did you ever see the episode of South Park where they were making fun of World War Z? Cartman plays Brad Pitt's character, and it was the Zimmerman controversy happened. Do you remember when that off-duty cop shot the guy, and there was
Zimmerman wasn't a cop.
Oh, okay. Well, he was
I remembered that though. I remember Zimmerman. Yeah.
You're right. I can't remember what the scenario was, but it was South Park, typical South Park. They did like the 2 or 3 layovers into one episode. Sure. But one of the things was World War Z, and they kind of recreated World War Z, but with Cartman as the main guy.
I vaguely remember this, yeah.
One of the bits in it, go back and watch it and then watch World War Z again, because it will ruin it for you. Because like one of the things that happens in South Park is just that it keeps happening, is that he'd get on a plane and then it crashes and everything, like everyone dies except for him. And then he gets on another plane and that crashes and everyone dies except for him. And it's like he just keeps going from disaster to disaster and like avoiding it somehow.
I already don't need to watch that to already know that about fucking World War Z and 2012.
World War Z though, I'm watching it, like I watched it recently and I'm like, oh my God, it's true. He just gets on a plane and it crashes and everyone dies and he just keeps going. What the hell?
It's like, yeah, the whole, I actually really like World War Z.
Me
now
too.
That we're talking about it, let's fucking tear it apart. That whole Jerusalem scene is by far the dumbest fucking scene. Very enjoyable, very exciting. Very fucking dumb. And then when the plane... Go on, sorry.
When you watch World War Z, do you get the vibe, and there's a follow-up to this, do you get the vibe that it's a series of vignettes, like small, short stories that all kind of like seem to be strung together?
I've never thought about that, but now that I'm thinking about it, you're kind of right, because even the opening scene of... forget saying Brad Pitt's name, but a father with military and government experience is dealing with this thing in the city. So he gets his family through the city, gets him out of the city, gets called in, and a helicopter picks him up. And then it's like,
right,
you said, like, end of story, end of the mission in the video game, end of the mission.
Right, moving on to the next one.
And then you have an agent in the field who's flying to South Korea. His doctor dies immediately. He finds all this information. Now he's going to Jerusalem. You're right. It's kind of like different story, same guy.
You could even like look at it from even even smaller point of view, it's the initial shock, the news reports and the rioting through the streets. It's the initial fortifying yourself when he's in that giant apartment block, and there's the families in there and they're starting to learn how to hide, and silence is a big deal. And then there's the looking for supplies, driving through the city and trying to find a pharmacy and all that kind of stuff. Very different, like all different stages of a zombie outbreak that, is kind of covered.
Sure. No, that's a way to look at it. Yeah, no, I never thought of it like that, but it is kind of like different phases. I know you don't watch Game of Thrones, but there was an episode of Game of Thrones kind of like that in the final season that was interesting too. Like there was like 3 different genres in one episode.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, and like I said, a really enjoyable movie. Even with willing suspension of disbelief, there were some things upon rewatch, because I've seen it a dozen fucking times, to where I am kind of like, they didn't think that one through. Like the writers, like, they didn't think that one through.
Well, it was truly, and I just know this about the production. It was gone back and reshot a few times.
Really?
It was initially going to be a rated R movie, and then they tried to edit it down to a PG-13 so they can get that out. A lot of things were different about it.
Anytime a zombie movie's rated to PG-13, I'm just like, this isn't going to be good. Granted, I like World War Z.
Okay, but, yeah. Thank you. That was me. Like, usually when I see a horror movie rated PG-13, I think, awesome. Horror movie rated PG-13, that's like, okay, they're getting creative. They're really going to go with it. Rather than just leaning on the violence and whatever, they're going to get creative. XYZ examples I don't want to get into right now. But World War Z, yeah, a zombie movie rated PG-13, come on. If I don't see brains, it's not a zombie movie. I mean, there's got to be at least one gratuitous titty, alive or dead. There's got to be organs in there somewhere. And I mean like intestine organs. Like it's got to be, yeah, but anyway.
World War Z did get around it, but like the things I was talking about, like in the opening scene where they're driving through the city. Great scene. I actually really enjoy the scene, but there is when they're kind of stuck in traffic and the motorcycle runs by and knocks his mirror off.
Yeah.
And he gets out and he's like, okay, he picks it up and he looks around. Other drivers are like, hey, you all right? And he's like, yeah, what's going on? And he's looking around. And then all of a sudden, like he gets in his car and they're kind of thinking, all of a sudden, I forgot if it was an ambulance or a fucking truck, just plows by.
Yeah.
Like you didn't see that fucking thing coming? Like... Because we're talking
it's very Hollywood.
Yeah, like, and granted, it was a great moment. I still love the movie, but like I said, this last watch, I was like, what? You didn't see that? Like, even the camera, like, you see him look back and talking to people, and no one's aware of this big truck just plowing through, like 50 yards back.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that, but yeah. Now I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it. Yeah.
The scene, I actually, surprisingly, in that movie, though, probably one of my favorite scenes, because it's so... subtle, and I like subtleties and quiet. When they jack that camper. Thank God there's keys in it. Or did
Hollywoodism.
Did they
Hollywoodism? We're not getting. I don't remember.
There was, I think, me and a buddy were joking about creating like a series of sketches of like the quote unquote scenes you don't see, and just have a montage of people like getting out of their cars, like, you know what? Let's just put my keys right here just in case. And just because no one does that shit. There's always keys. It's on the dash, but
what the hell, man?
Anyway, so they steal the camper. They drive to the. They get out of the city. They go to the next town or whatever. I think they're in Jersey, and they go, like you said, the pharmacy because his kid has asthma and they need medicine. And he has the rifle, and he kind of goes to the the pharmacy in the store, and the guy there has a pistol on him. And they're kind of like this tense moment, and he's just kind of like, "What do you need?"
Yeah, yeah.
Like the pharmacist is like, "What do you need?"
Right.
And I forgot the name of the medicine, but so Brad Pitt kind of knocks it out, and he's kind of like, all right, cool. And he just starts grabbing shit, and he's like, here, take this too. Like, it works for my girl. And he starts giving him shit, and it's like just really quiet, and the pharmacist is just like he's not like chill, but you could tell he's like, I will fucking murder anyone who crosses this counter.
Right.
But I'm nice, but I'm going to help you. Like, you need medicine, but like, I am completely done with this shit.
Yeah.
Like in a very serious way where he's just like, okay, what do you need?
Was almost at the line. Is like, I've seen looters, and if I see one more looter, I'm just gonna blast them, and I'm almost at that breaking point. But okay, no, this guy's legit. Okay,
you have a girl with you. What do you need? And, okay, yeah, because especially when he grabs the extra shit and he's like, here, this usually does wonders for my kid. I was like, oh, that's I want to see a spinoff of him.
It's a
what he went
fascinating
through. Yeah.
point, and it's like maybe a touch on human character. I don't know, but it's like why? What's his loyalty to look after the pharmacy? It's is he going to use all that shit? There's no way. Why is he still there, and why does he still have that feeling that he needs to protect it? Or it's like, no, this is my job. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to stand here and make sure this is guarded, because in this psychotic chaos, this is the one realm of control I still have, is to make sure all these drugs stay safe.
That's kind of an interesting point. And I think now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it's just because, like, I mean, I'm not going to make an analogy to COVID, but in like a breakout like that,
Yeah.
in the first, because that's still in the first hours in the movie, the first hours of it happening.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe some people are like, this is just a temporary freak out. It's going to go back to normal.
Sure. Yeah,
so
okay.
maybe he's like, I still want my job when this is done, so I'm going to hold this shit down. Because I will make an allusion to COVID. I'm not going to compare the fucking COVID disease to zombies, but I remember.
Go ahead. We're all in a safe place. Go for it.
that aside, but early on when like a lot of things were shut down and like takeout only and all this stuff, we did have a few bartenders who were like, "Hey, we'll work for free.
Oh wow. Okay.
We'll like do takeout shifts for free on us because one, we want to help you guys stay open so that we still have a job when this shit is done."
There you go. Yeah.
And like we'll just work for tips. We'll just work for tips, and we'll just help you get by until shit goes back to normal, because we still want our job when it goes back to normal. Wow. So we did have some people like that, and so maybe this guy in this movie, that was his thing. Yeah. Like once this shit, granted, obviously it doesn't come back to normal right away, but maybe that's his thought process. Is like these are just looters, like every other fucking thing. Because you think about it, at the time, he maybe didn't even see a zombie yet. There were no zombies in that store. Maybe he thinks just someone, there's some social justice thing, or people are pissed off about something and they're just looting. The Lakers lost the championship, like shit's happening.
It happens.
But no, I think that's an interesting point that like he's just chilling there.
Yeah.
And I had another idea about that, but I'm kind of blanking on it now.
No, but I did like, that was a great little moment, and that the whole movie is kind of filled with little moments like that, of little small characters but big characters. You know what I mean? Small, like little parts but big character.
Great supporting cast. Yes.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Where
So what I was gonna say with the pharmacy guy, I think, and you alluded to it, is that there is a comfort in normalcy, and maybe with everything going on, that was like where he goes. A question somebody brought up to me one time. It's just a philosophical question. In a zombie apocalypse, any sort of apocalypse, and this sounds so basic, but it kind of illustrates this point. Will you still drive in lanes?
Oh, I love it. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Interesting.
Like there's no reason to. You're not going to get pulled over. There's no one else really on the road, but do you still stay in the lane?
Wow.
Would you?
I think I would. I think I would. Well, because that is familiar. You know what I mean? It's like if I were in a apocalypse and I was somehow in England, I would drive on the right side of the road in the lane, because in my realm of driving, that's what I know to be normal, and I'm in control of what is normal. And, I've driven where people have veered onto oncoming traffic and all that. So I feel like I could adjust to other people fucking around. And maybe one day, I'll ride that middle lane and fuck it. Pull a little Woody Harrelson from Zombieland, but you know.
And that's what, even taking it a step further, and this is the conversation I had with this guy, this is a couple years back, was like, would you drive in lanes and would you park in parking spots?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I want to come up with more like questions like that, because with me, I'm like, driving, I would absolutely stay in the lane, because like I said, it's a skill and I'm going to stick to what's familiar. But there's got to be things like, what are some like normalcy things that you do? You would probably obviously stop at every intersection because you want to make sure it's clear, but you know, but what kind of like rules would you follow carried over from society? And does that say something about the rules we have is it just society, or does it actually serve a purpose?
No, exactly. And that was the main purpose of the conversation, was like, regarding parking spots and lanes, is like the normalcy. This is comfortable. This is what we do, even though now it really doesn't serve a purpose anymore. But this is what you do, and it's what kind of makes you comfortable in a subconscious sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you wash your hands after you use the restroom? Probably, you know,
if there's soap.
If there's soap. No, but like let's say plumbing and soap is all there and you go to piss. Do you use a bathroom? And if you do use a bathroom, do you wash your hands?
Peeing, I wouldn't be too concerned about washing my hands. I've pretty much mastered no handing it.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, nice. Okay.
Obviously, I'm dropping a deuce. I'm washing my hands every time. If it's available, every time.
Yeah. And why? Because it is sanitary for yourself, too. It keeps yourself healthy. But
yes,
yeah,
might as well.
But anyway, I like that. I like that topic. I'm gonna try to think of more of those. I like that. But anyway, but back to World War Z. So we touched on it a little bit, but it was based on a book, quote unquote, based on a book. And I'll get into because I went into World War Z hating it. Like I went to the theater and I'm like, this is gonna suck dick, and I had reasons why. PG-13 was one of them. The biggest reason is because it was based on a book, and the book was actually phenomenal, but the movie was nothing like the book.
That's what I've heard. The big criticism is that the movie is not bad, but it just doesn't really do anything with the book. Yeah.
It was just another zombie movie. And you're like, if you're going to make another zombie movie, call it something else, you know, kind of thing. But so do you know, have you said you hadn't read the book, right?
I have not.
Do you know what it's about or read anything about it?
I generally know what it's about. Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that it kind of is almost like an historical book, like a history book about what happened during the zombie apocalypse. Yeah,
that's it exactly. Yeah, so it's a collection of interviews, of transcribed interviews. Max Brooks, the author of it, wrote the Zombie Survival Guide, which is kind of what made him famous. Well, his dad is what made him famous, Mel Brooks, but Max Brooks wrote the Zombie Survival Guide, and it was drawn out like an actual great survival guide of surviving the zombie apocalypse, and it was hilarious, and I loved it. So he wrote this other book called World War Z, and every excerpt, it was broken up into chapters, and each chapter is the different stages of a zombie apocalypse. And it's just made up of interviews of people that lived through it. So in the book, it's already happened. It's already happened and it's moved on. And yeah, like you said, it's a historical thing. But like, you know, the first section is the outbreak, how it was discovered, where it was first reported. And they like, you know, interview this guy who was a doctor in Africa who like worked with patient zero, you know, that kind of thing. And then throughout the whole thing, interviewed soldiers who were on the front lines during the initial reaction, the discovery of, you know, the being able to get the upper hand, the fighting back and gaining back the world, and then the cleanup, which is probably my favorite part of the book, was like a lot of interviews at the end talking about, okay, now it's not a crisis anymore, but we still have a cleanup. We have to go through and clean up. You know, there was a chapter where a guy his job was going through the sewers and finding the zombies down in the sewers in pitch blackness and all these surviving quote unquote zombies that were everywhere. It was really, really good because it's just very intricate.
So a couple questions. As far as in the book, is it the same concept as the movie to where like it's the weakness is the weakness? Is that if you make yourself have a deadly disease? No. What's in the book? What is
in the book? It's zombies like George Romero, Land of the Living Dead, or Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, zombie. They're undead and they come back to life, and you have to shoot them in the head to kill them.
So it's not an infection; it's an undead. It's undead.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
So the book was like a zombie book. This one, which I loved, granted, that's why it's like such beef with World War Z, because it was actually a great, creative, good idea movie of this disease that like is lethal, and that's what they see, that they're lethal, they're gonna die, and so they move on to the next one. But yeah,
but it's just not based on the book. Yeah,
it wasn't based on the book, and that was my biggest beef, and that's what everyone's beef. And I hate those people that are like, you know, it's not as good as the book. In this case, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's not the same as the book was better. It's simply this isn't the book.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. So that aside, that's my douchebaggery. I read the book, you know, kind of aside.
I wouldn't even say it's the same as the douchebaggery, though, because it's not that it was adapted and just didn't live up to the adaptation. It was adapted. It was a good movie. It just simply wasn't the book.
Right, literally. Yeah. And that's why I always, anytime I talk about the movie, I talk about how much I liked it and this and that. But here's just the thing, you know, and, you know, I get into that. But anyway.
I think his Brad Pitt's character's name was Jerry? Was he a character in World War Z or no? Or is he
not that I know of? The interviewer I assumed was Max Brooks, because they never really say the interviewers' names, and in fact, it's mostly the bits in the book where the interviewer asks the questions or remarks are like very small, like almost non-existent, like one line at a time, and then it's mostly paragraphs of the people giving their answer and talking about what they saw. Sure. There were some reoccurring people that were interviewed, like there was a Marine that they like interviewed in a couple chapters and a few times, but I'll have to go back and reread it. I haven't read it since I've seen the movie, so but
sure. And the movie came out a while back.
Yeah, a long time ago.
No, yeah, it was a good movie. Just like I said, there were certain parts of it where I was like, really? Like the Jerusalem scene was kind of fucking ridiculous. Like,
but that's why I asked if you noticed that was vignettes, because that's kind of how the book was. It was like little sections of little bits throughout the whole thing. So yeah, my friend Ryan and I, because we saw the remake of Dawn of the Dead in 2004 in theaters, and that was the first real zombie movie I saw in theaters and all that. And since then I've been obsessed with zombie movies and zombie books and lore and all that kind of stuff.
I think that was the first zombie movie I saw in theater too, actually, now that I think about it.
It's still my favorite for several reasons, and
it's great.
It's a great zombie movie.
It has its issues, which what movie doesn't? No, it's a pretty solid movie.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Not as good as Walking Dead, but still pretty.
Hey, you know what? A lot of people will hate on it. I like The Walking Dead.
Fuck that show and fuck everyone that supported it.
I haven't finished I haven't finished the last season yet, but I've enjoyed it, even at its lows. Yeah. Even at its lows.
I'll watch it someday. I'll finish it. I tried. I quit on it. Anyway.
And I know a lot of people that did. I think the problem with The Walking Dead, and this is not a problem that bothered me, but I understand the general consensus of the problem, quote unquote, is everyone, and this is anecdotal, but everyone who I've talked to who gave up on The Walking Dead, so to speak, was because they're like, I'm tired of this cycle of they meet a new society, a new group, they tiff with them, they have problems with them, and then after they solve the problems or they kill each other, they wander for a while and they find a new group, and it's a repeat and rinse and repeat. And in my head, I was like, yeah, but wouldn't that kind of be what happens?
Well, yeah. I mean, and yeah, why I gave up on it. To an extent. Yeah. 100%. Well, why I gave up on it is because it stopped being about the zombies. And I'm like, I want to watch them survive the zombie. And then, there's that question of, okay, but then what? What's after that?
That's what I was going to say is like, I think there's something to that, to where I actually kind of like the idea of seeing how the problem's eventually solved. Because if any of these zombie movies, World War Z, the fucking Dawn of the Dead, whatever, eventually either all the humans just die or they find a way to survive and live on. And it becomes, at least in The Walking Dead, when it becomes more of like, how do they continue surviving, it naturally does become less about the zombies. Because let's say, and we don't have to argue about it, COVID was an issue. Eventually, we find a way to live with it and we move on. And so if there was a documentary about the COVID vaccine, the COVID outbreak, at some point it's going to get boring because it's not going to be really mainly about COVID anymore.
Right, yeah.
And so, because even like there's been kind of some films, and not really TV shows, but certain little stories being told about things happening during COVID. And it's interesting because it's happening during COVID, but if you followed up with sequels and sequels and sequels, you'd have to find a way to make it interesting, because the COVID thing eventually can't be a factor anymore.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So, no, Walking Dead, in my opinion, was one of the classic examples of American television of outliving its welcome.
That's fair.
British series and well, and some American shows too. HBO does it a lot. They set a series and they set an end point and be like, this is the show, it's over, it's done. We call that a limited series, or whatever.
You're right. Yeah. I think even like The Office, the British version was like maybe 2 seasons.
Right. Yeah.
That's common.
So
there,
Walking Dead, it was like, oh, this is good. And people were like, we want more. And the writer's like, oh shit, we gotta write some more. And it just overstayed. And
I think, and this is, even though I've enjoyed it, this is not a defense of it, but I think that the difference with The Walking Dead was they had still lots of source material to go off of. So they're like, we could still go.
Yeah.
Without thinking of, casting concerns.
Sure.
Because
yeah.
Andrew Lincoln, I haven't read the comics, but Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick, in the comics, Rick doesn't die. to my knowledge. But in the series, Andrew Lincoln didn't want to keep doing it. So now you have an issue. Do you recast, which is hard to do with a lead character, or do you write him off? And they wrote him off, at least to my knowledge, temporarily, whatever. You have Norman Reedus, who played a character not in the book, or not in the comics, who Norman Reedus is great in everything he does, so obviously everyone loved him.
Yeah.
So how do you work him in, honestly, to the books?
Yeah.
And so I think it is this kind of weird thing to where, yeah, you have tons of source material, but with the problems of shooting something live with actors and stories and trying to make it work, which characters you keep, which characters you don't keep, it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So even though I still like The Walking Dead to the end, at least if you have more episodes I have to watch, I could see why some people don't.
Okay.
It's hard to adapt. Even like comic book movies don't adapt the entire comic book line. They take like small stories and adapt them.
That's
so
true.
to try to adapt a comic book season by season the way the story went in the book, like it's kind of tough.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that they didn't hold to it 100%, so they kept the audience guessing. And now I'd like, now obviously it'd be kind of funny to see the percentage of people that started watching it that knew the comic book versus the people that peak Walking Dead even knew there was a comic book. Like kind of.
I didn't when it started.
Yeah. So like I'm sure that changed around. I would love if I'd asked once a long time ago in the podcast if you were given a green light to funding for a show or a movie, what would you do? If you were given a green light and funding all the money you needed to make a movie or to make a show, what would you do? I had another great idea of like The Walking Dead, but done as an anthology kind of series where each season follows a different cast, but all taking place in the same world in the same zombie apocalypse, but a different group dealing it. And you could do it at the outbreak, you could do it at the end, you could do it in the middle, you could do it all over the place. But I thought that would be pretty good.
I think that'd be a really cool idea. Keeps it fresh, keeps it interesting.
Yeah, because that way, I mean, the only canon you would have to hold to is the one you're making in this show, and it's like it's
whatever
a zombie
you already
apocalypse.
created,
Because there's that thrill of well, I mentioned my friend Ryan, and when we saw Dawn of the Dead 2004, one of the things we loved about it is that in that one it kind of touched on the bigger world, what's happening in the whole world, because almost every zombie movie you'll see has a cast of about 5 people. So that way you can relate to it. But it really only happens in one situation, one building or one city, and one, in Night of the Living Dead, it was one house. In Dawn of the Dead, it was a mall.
The mall, yeah.
It always happens in like a closed space. Well, granted, because they don't have a budget to go big or whatever.
Yeah.
World War Z touched on the worldwide kind of aspect of it, how the different cultures react and different governments react. And so that's what I really liked about that. That was fresh.
Yeah, and that's what even and this is not canon at all to The Walking Dead, but I remember talking to somebody. I was like, I would love to see like a spin-off, maybe just like one episode or an hour-long special of like The Walking Dead, but they're in England. Ooh. And literally, this zombie apocalypse is strictly an American problem.
Oh wow!
Like some disease broke out in the U.S. because like in the show, you don't really know. And like watching all these other countries going, what the fuck? Are you watching this shit?
Yeah, holy shit.
Because there's like an episode or two in The Walking Dead where like a helicopter flies over or like an airplane. I think early on, to where it's like I wonder like that would be interesting twist on it to where this disease spread through America and the rest of the world was pretty much like fuck that, shut it down.
Yeah.
And it was
that was
America.
great about 28 Days Later. Was that the concept in 28 Days Later was it was only in England and there was still planes going over and it was like the rest of the world was like, what the fuck is happening in England? And then that's how it ends, is that it eventually dies out. But
I thought those were actually 2 brilliant movies.
Yes.
Both of them.
Yes.
I heard they were going to do a 28 Months Later.
I did too.
But I'm not sure if they are going to anymore. But
I'm okay if they don't. I was happy with what they have, and if the original creator doesn't feel a third, then don't do a third. But
so because I watched 28 Weeks Later first.
Oh shit! Okay.
And obviously, we've talked about this before, I believe, even on camera, off camera, whatever. That there's a difference between a flawed writing and a flawed character.
Yes.
Where a flawed character is realistic, flawed writing is problematic.
Just bad writing, yeah.
Yeah, and the guy the wife who had like the condition where she was infected, but not reacting to it.
Yeah. Not she was asymptomatic.
There you go.
Yeah.
The term was eluding me. And then the guy who was like the janitor who survived, who like ditched her.
Yeah.
Comes in and not realizing that she's infected, but he has clearance.
Right. Oh, so good.
And even you see in her eyes, like, because it's a flawed character, it's like he has no business being in that fucking room.
Yep.
And he should know better. But then he starts kissing her, and you're like, oh no. And then from there, I would say somewhat to the situation, somewhat realistic about how it was handled and how it just broke out. How these snipers are now trying to like decide to shoot these people or not. Like, it was so interesting to me. It was so interesting. And then
because it was a different perspective than the, oh my God, zombies, get to the Ace Hardware and get our guns so we can run off into the mountains. It was a different aspect. It was really good.
So after I enjoyed the shit out of that one, I went back and watched 28 Days Later, and I was like, this was also very good.
Yeah.
It was super interesting.
Yeah.
Where it's not really like zombies, they're just fucking rage monsters.
Right.
Super interesting.
Yeah. So I've heard
go on.
I've heard that the writer, director, creator of 28 Days Later and the writer, director of Shaun of the Dead, Edgar Wright, they're actually buddies, and they reference each other's movies in the movies. In Shaun of the Dead, which came out after 28 Days Later, Shaun of the Dead references infected monkeys that may have caused all this, and because that was the reference to 28 Days Later. In 28 Weeks Later, there is a reference to Shaun of the Dead somehow, or was it Hot Fuzz? I can't remember, but there is some reference to one of those movies because they kind of poke at each other. It's pretty fun.
So I was gonna say, Shaun of the Dead is probably my favorite zombie movie.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a second favorite for me.
And your first is Dawn of the Dead, right?
Yeah.
It's just my favorite because, like, and there's not that many. So my disdain for him aside, not my disdain, my kind of just contrarian views on him of Hot Fuzz and The World's End
was because of how great Shaun of the Dead was, right? Like,
well, no. So like Hot Fuzz, to me anyway, was clearly satire. Like 100% satire. The World's End kind of straddled the line, but in my head still satire. This is strictly comedy. Whereas Shaun of the Dead was satire while still being a solid fucking zombie movie.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Like, it's still a good zombie movie. Like, the guy, like, you see guts and people getting torn apart. And, like, even the survival aspect of it, of, like, what they're trying to do and how they kind of fail. Yeah. It's actually a really good zombie movie. Like, the comedy aside.
Yeah. No, 100%. Because like even what we talked about earlier with World War Z, where the guy shot himself in the head. There's a scene in Shaun of the Dead where they get a rifle and they're gonna shoot at these zombies, and he's missing every fucking shot, and it's great because I'm like, yeah, we would miss. What the fuck? Like,
yeah, and even it's one of those things when you watch, you're like, this wouldn't happen, but like, no, it would happen when like the zombies are like breaking into the bar and they're breaking bottles and putting knives to each other's throat.
Yeah,
like you remember, and it's like you're like that wouldn't happen. We'd come together, and it's like, would you?
Would you though? I mean, they're bitching over a girl. We would 100% start fighting about a girl in the middle of it.
So no, it's my favorite because like the comedy's there and it's funny and it's really subtle. I do like the subtle comedy, and so it's really subtle. It's very intelligent, but it's still a good zombie movie.
It's a sign of good comedy when it's like it's too real and you can't laugh at it because it's just real. Shaun of the Dead's one of my dad's favorite movies too, because one of his favorite bits in it is actually the first quarter of the movie. It's that before the zombie outbreak, Shaun is like super paranoid and he's looking around at everything and everything looks weird and everything whatever. And then the outbreak happens. And he does the same walk to the shop and back to his house, completely oblivious to the fact that the zombies go. And it's like, oh my God, that 100% would be me. Here I am, like thinking I'm prepared for the zombie apocalypse. But if it happened, I would walk out to my truck and go to work and not even noticing the dudes walking around. Like, I would just be completely oblivious. And if I saw someone acting like a zombie, I'd be like, they're probably drunk and, on drugs.
And I remember I thought about that and had a conversation with someone, like, if in the situation where, like, a zombie was approaching me, like, tomorrow if I'm at work or I'm doing something and a zombie's approaching me, like, my reaction wouldn't be like, I should stab it in the head. I would be like, you know what I mean? I'd be like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy? I'd be like, what the fuck's wrong with this guy? And I'd be like, yo, get off me, dude. Like, it's the fuck. And so we yell at these people when we watch the movies, but it's like, no, you wouldn't know what the fuck's happening. You'd be like, oh, this person's out of their mind.
Yeah. The whole scene of Sean and Ed in the backyard with the zombie girl, and they're just like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, 100% true. And that's why it makes it so good. But yeah.
Well, even like, and so my laptop, granted, I have an external drive now with all the shit that I want to save. But like for a while,
Not bragging.
But no, like for a while, if it was on my laptop, like if a zombie broke into my house and I was running, just trying to, granted, I have knives everywhere, but still, if like the first thing in front of me was my laptop, I'd probably grab it and be like, I don't want to break this. You know what I mean? Like, I have too much stuff on this. I have too much
throw
stuff.
that. No.
I can't break this. So when they were going through like the records,
yeah,
like it was kind of, it was silly, but like it was realistic. Like you would be like, I don't want to break that one.
It's what made it so funny. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, come on, don't throw that. No, come on.
Yeah, and so even though like those bits were funny, it's kind of realistic. Like that's what you do. It was great. It was such a great movie.
It is and then it gets real at points where it's like, oh shit, yeah, what if your mom turned into a zombie and you'd have to shoot your mom? That'd be like, holy shit, you know? It's kinda...
Yeah, no, 100%. And then dude, like, Mom, he's dead. I forgot the name of the stepdad. He's your husband.
No, he isn't.
No, he isn't. What? Ah!
Yeah.
And then he still turned down the music. Oh, silly.
That was so good. So good, yeah.
No, it was such, and you're right. It got real during the mom situation when he leaves Ed to die, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like it was such a good movie. Like I remember watching it. I forgot when it came out. We were probably both in high school or early college.
Yeah, right.
But
I remember being a junior and someone asking if I'd seen it yet. And yeah. Anyway.
So no, but I remember just watching it. And then when it ended, I was like, "This is one of those things where you're just like, that's fucking good." Like, I granted, I'm not going to tangent, but when I walked out of the theater when I saw The Departed, me and this chick that I went to see it with, we walked out of the theater. We didn't say a word. Walked to my car. We got in, and I just remember it was like, that was really fucking good. And she was like, yeah, it was. And that's like with Shaun of the Dead. I forgot if I saw it in theater or if I saw it on TV, but I remember like it ended, and I was like, that was a solid fucking movie.
Yeah.
That was a solid fucking movie because it works as a satire, it works as a comedy, it works as a fucking zombie drama movie. Like it hits all these fucking different points, and it's like, how do you get that? Yeah,
it was written and made by true fans of the zombie like genre.
Sure. Did you see? I don't think Edgar Wright wrote it. I forgot who wrote it, but Paul.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Another movie.
I think Seth Rogen wrote it. I think
he had. I'm not sure. Yeah, he had hands in it, but I think even Simon Pegg had a hand in the writing.
Yeah.
But even
Hilarious.
that movie, yeah, I walked in that movie thinking it was gonna be strictly a comedy, but then like you see all these homages to the great sci-fis and all this shit, and then when that movie ended, I was like, it's a solid fucking movie. I was like, fucking great movie. The moment I realized that they were actually throwing out like blatant homages. Homages, is that a word? Homage was when the fucking actor's name, the guy who played the agent, he was in I'm blanking on the goddamn name.
I can't picture him. I know Sigourney Weaver's in it. And
not Sigourney Weaver. He was the agent who was chasing them, who ended up being Paul's friend.
Yeah. Was it Ruffalo? Was it Ruffalo?
That was Ruffalo. He was in that goddamn.
Jason Bateman.
Bateman. Yes, Bateman. Yeah. I suck at remembering names. When he was driving and Sigourney Weaver, you find out, but she's yelling at him on the radio, and he shoots the radio and it's like boarding conversation anyway. Yeah, I was like, wait. I was like, wait a second. And that's when I started picking up on all that shit. And I was like, all right, cool.
Now I have to go back and watch them. It's so good.
And I did. Absolutely. I saw it in theaters, and that's when I realized it. When it came out on DVD streaming or whatever, I went back and watched it several times. And I started picking up on all this shit. And I was like, oh, nice.
It's such a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Simon Pegg said it was Simon Pegg or someone else said it was like their love note to Steven Spielberg.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. E.T. for sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's very much like a modern E.T. Like, what if some Comic-Con stoners actually found an alien? How would they react? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of.
And and this is, I'm overthinking this completely, but you got to think, aliens are going to be stoners too. You know what I mean? Like,
they're going to be flawed. They're going to be, imperfect and all that too.
If we were astronauts and we got shot into the galaxy and we end up crash landing somewhere and these aliens came in and they have personalities, they have different things, and as the outsiders, they handed us a cup with some liquid in it and they're like, drink this. And we drank it and I was like, oh, this tastes kind of good and it makes me feel good. Give me more. Like, yeah. Like,
well, I mean, you could look at it on a cosmic or even microcosmic. Is that redundant? Anyway,
whatever.
We have no example of a perfect circle in this world. However, we still have the concept of a perfect circle. So where did we get that example from? That's Plato's explanation for God. But we know that the world that we live in, the universe that we live in, is imperfect. It's fractured. It makes mistakes and it messes up. It's human. And, the term we use, that we're human, because humans make mistakes and they mess up. They fall victim to temptation and they pursue the flesh rather than ideology, just like the physical world we inhabit. So logically, if we met other beings, other life forms and other, they would still be in this flawed universe. So they themselves would be flawed as well. So yeah, they wouldn't be all knowing, all good, or all evil. They'd be, like conflicted just like us. They'd have temptations and shortcomings just like us.
They might be smarter because they built better spacecraft.
Well, they got here first, so they're ahead of us for sure.
But doesn't mean they don't like to hit the blunt too.
Come on. I mean, think about it. Who are the first people that's going to get, if we got to aliens before they got to us? If we got to aliens, what are the kind of people that are going to be on that trip, or at least coordinating that trip to get there? It's going to be fucking Elon Musk and that psycho who runs Facebook. They're fucking stoners, and they're
yeah. They're going to be scientists who are brilliant, but who are definitely smoking and drinking when they're off the clock.
I got to tell you, the top 3 people that I know that I would consider the smartest people that I know, like beyond like stupid smart. I'm thinking of them. I'm not going to say their names, but I'm thinking of 3 people that I know that are extremely smart. So smart, it's just stupid. They all get fucked up, and they either smoke or they do hallucinogens. They get crazy, or they're addicted to other stuff. So yeah, come on.
Yeah. And especially like with Paul, they found him, they talked to him. Once they established communication with him, they were probably like, do you on your planet happen to take toxins or any other form of substance to have a good time?
Judgment impairing or mood enhancing supplements. Yeah, come on, why not?
Paul was great.
It's called not enough oxygen or too much oxygen. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to do an episode of zombie survival, like actual, because Danny and I back in high school was one of the things he and I connected on like right away was zombie survival and what guns we would use and where we would go and what's the plan for standing out against the zombies. So that'll be a fun one. So I want to do it, but I won't do it without Danny because that'd be fun.
I'm writing it down. Comparing and contrasting with Danny.
Are you writing it or typing it?
Fuck off. I'm communicating it to be read later.
Fuck off. Transcribing it, however that might be.
All right, so this started with me wanting to just point out a very unfortunate flaw in World War Z, and we ended up talking about a bunch of different zombie shit.
I love it. Yeah, I had a couple other topics written down. It's like if we can get to it, but no, not tonight, man.
Yeah,
not tonight.
We'll save it for later.
World War Z, good movie.
Yep. All right, on that note, bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Mike, for letting me join in.
You're welcome. You really had to twist my elbow.
Maybe next time we'll let some guests on, or maybe it'll just be me and Mike pontificating again. You know what? I'm happy either way. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Take it easy, guys.
All right. Have a good one.